In the beginning, it is not a warehouse or a headline. It is two merchants in New Jersey walking factory floors, touching towels and peeking at price tags, asking a simple question that department stores had stopped asking. What if Home Basics felt special without feeling expensive? The year is the early 70s. The shelves are still mostly brown and beige, and the bet is that a small, focused shop can outcare a tired giant. They call their first store Bed and Bath, a name that says exactly what you will find when you open the door. The door matters. A bell answers softly when it swings, and a light soap scent hangs near the front. Stacks are deliberate, not towering. You can see over most of them. A young couple on a Saturday afternoon walks the aisles with a paper list, arguing kindly about thread count and color. A clerk folds a sample and lets them feel the weave. Nothing about this is flashy. It is all hospitality disguised as retail. Word spreads because wedding season never really stops and because apartments keep getting new keys. Friends tell friends that there is a place where towels do not feel like afterthoughts. Pillows are stacked like bakery loaves. Curtains wait on hangers you can slide with two fingers. The store feels like a suggestion that homes do not have to be complicated to be comfortable. The founders learned their craft at a discounted goods chain that was fading. They left with a lesson tucked into their coat pockets. Big does not always mean better if big forgets who it is serving. At Bed and Bath, the promise is narrower and clearer. You will not buy a lawnmower here. You will not find a fur coat. You will find the pieces that make mornings and evenings calmer. Sheets that wash well, mats that do not slip, glasses that can survive a family dinner. As the decade turns, so do the shelves. The store grows from one address to a handful, then to a small map of the New York suburbs and California sunlight. A habit develops. Try a neighborhood, listen, adjust, and only then add another pin to the map. It is a cautious rhythm in an era that rewards caution. People begin to refer to the chain by nickname as if it is less a store and more a friendly pantry where you borrow ideas. Competition arrives wearing similar uniforms. Chains with linen in the name open nearby with showy stacks and bold signs. Prices jump around like radio dials. The response is not to shout louder, but to think longer. If the model is to be a store that knows your house, then maybe the house needs more than shelves of towels. Maybe it needs space, wide aisles, end caps that breathe, a cart that can hold a whole Saturday of improvements without turning push into strain. That thought becomes a blueprint. The modest stores begin to give way to large, single-story spaces where a family can walk without bumping elbows. Lighting is warmer, not brighter. Signage talks like a neighbor. The selection stretches quietly from bed and bath into kitchen and dining, storage and solutions, gifts that feel like useful promises. The heart stays the same. The lungs expand. A new name follows the new scale. It is not a poetry contest, just a practical label that tells you this is more than the old shop, while keeping the words you already trust. Bed Bath & Beyond hangs across wide facades in thick letters that you can read from a parking lot. Inside, the aisles run long like grocery store avenues, but end in little rooms that stage an idea. A corner of a nursery, a slice of a pantry, a table set for a Thursday night. With size comes a decision about manners. The stores could posture like luxury, but that would be a lie at the door. Instead, they choose friendly abundance. End caps show how a product lives, not just how it looks. Nearby, a shelf of trial sizes makes it easy to test a scent at home. If something does not work, the return counter treats the visit like a conversation, not a scolding. In a decade that often confuses scale with swagger, this approach wins trust. A piece of paper becomes part of the personality. It is blue and white and promises a generous break on one item, no questions about dates or fine print that would make you feel small. People tuck the coupons into kitchen drawers and glove compartments. They live on refrigerators with magnets. and in purses beside grocery lists. The coupon turns irregular trips into small traditions, a nudge to replace a tired spatula, a reason to finally buy the good duvet cover. Evening shoppers discover a pleasant rhythm. You can start in bedding and end in coffee makers without getting lost. Associates learn how to steer without steering. They ask what problem you are solving rather than what brand you prefer. Gift registries become part of the social calendar. A pair at the scanner laughs at the absurdity of deliberating over measuring cups, and yet they do because choosing now means fewer surprises later. The back rooms of these stores are quiet with purpose. Pallets move in steady lines, and inventory is tracked with systems that believe knowing what you own is the beginning of respect for a customer's time. Trucks arrive like clockwork to avoid the drama of empty hooks. In an age when some specialty chains mistake scarcity for excitement, these stores learn that home goods feel better when they feel reliable. A superstore can turn pushy in the wrong hands. Here it turns generous. The wider aisles make room for parents with strollers who are still learning to steer sleep deprivation. College checklists sit near the entrance in late summer, gentle and complete, so that a dorm room can become a temporary home in one trip. There are displays that solve small frictions, a caddy that stops shower bottles from toppling, a basket that slides under a bed without complaining. The name begins to travel beyond its original counties. New markets greet the stores with sensible curiosity and then adopt them with ease. The brand does not insist on glamour. It insists on usability. Managers learn the contours of local tastes and stock colors that make sense in that light. A winter city gets thicker throws. A coastal town gets more glass and fewer heavy drapes. The beyond in the sign proves flexible without becoming fuzzy. The company goes public during one of those springs when the market loves a clear story. Investors like a specialty chain that looks boring on purpose. Expansion accelerates but does not sprint. Opening day feels choreographed without being stiff. Balloons for the kids, coffee for early birds, neat rows of carts that do not wobble. The stores keep their voice even as there are more of them to speak at once. Holiday seasons show how the model handles stress. Crowds come for roasting pans and picture frames, guest towels and spare pillows. The lines move. The shelves refill. The coupon stack at the register shrinks by inches as clerks smile and say yes to the soft question at the edge of every shopper's eyes. Is this still good? It is. The brand earns something hard to measure, the benefit of the doubt. In the late 90s, the footprint grows again, and the assortment with it. Kitchen gadgets that used to live in catalogs now live on hooks where you can try the squeeze and feel the spring. Small electrics get a wall of their own, so a blender can be chosen by ear as well as by price. Storage becomes a conversation about how to make a closet less argumentative. The stores are not teaching so much as reminding. Many small improvements make a day feel calmer. The culture outside notices. With each new home movie where a couple scans for gifts and argues about towel colors, the chain becomes a shorthand for a certain life stage. Sitcoms use the blue coupon as a prop because audiences will understand the joke. That kind of recognition is earned one return, one registry, one quiet upsell at a time. The brand becomes a reliable character in the background of modern domestic life. As growth continues, the company begins to look sideways at adjacent needs. A guest bathroom shares a shopping list with a drugstore aisle. A nursery shares one with a specialty baby chain. Rather than pretend those needs do not exist, the leadership considers whether bringing them closer could keep trips simpler for families. Those thoughts will turn into deals and new banners in the years ahead. But for now, they live as a promise that the store will keep trying to be useful. What makes these early years remarkable is not an invention or a slogan. It is the steadiness of the tone. The stores talk softly and carry full shelves. Employees are trained to make a replacement easy instead of a lecture likely. A product that fails gets swapped without ceremony because the relationship matters more than a single sale. In return, customers show up with those familiar coupons and a level of trust that most chains wish they could bottle. Close your eyes and you can picture a particular Saturday. A family with a cart that squeaks quietly makes 3 laps without noticing time pass. The teenager chooses hangers that all match for the first time. The parent compares the feel of cotton and bamboo and decides the difference is worth it. At checkout, a folded square of blue takes the edge off the total, and a small bag of trial-size soaps rides home in the front of the cart for the guest bathroom that finally feels ready. By the end of this first chapter, what began as Bed and Bath has become a network of spacious, predictable stores that sell not just objects, but relief. The founder's idea that specialty could feel welcoming rather than precious has survived contact with scale. The sign out front is larger now, the assortment wider, the aisles longer. Yet the promise at the door is still the same. Come in with a list, leave with a little more confidence about the place you live. The next years will bring bigger leaps. New banners will join the family. A simple blue coupon will become part of popular culture. And for a long stretch, Bed Bath & Beyond will be the store you visit when life turns a corner. A wedding, a move, a child on the way. That is where we will pick up soon as the brand widens its reach and tests how much beyond a single sign can hold. The store that began with towels and courage enters the web era like a neighbor learning email, cautiously with good manners. A simple site appears with pictures that load one line at a time on family computers. It does not try to be a carnival. It tries to be helpful. A registry quietly moves from clipboards and scanners to keyboards and screens so a grandmother 2 states away can choose the casserole dish the couple actually wants. What once required an aisle now fits inside a browser window. The blue coupon follows the culture online the way a favorite song finds a streaming playlist. It sits on fridges and glove compartments as always, but now it also lives in inboxes and printer trays. The promise is the same. Bring this along and we will say yes. That good-natured predictability turns one-off shoppers into regulars. It is a paper square that behaves like a handshake. Weekends in the big boxes take on a familiar rhythm. A bridal pair stands by a display of mixing bowls and laughs at the idea of arguing over sizes. Then they do, and it is somehow felt like a place you would return to when ordinary problems needed calm solutions. Behind the scenes, the company starts to think sideways about nearby needs. A drugstore aisle shares shoppers with guest bathrooms. A baby aisle shares households with bedding and storage. The first move is small and practical. Bring health and beauty basics into the family under a name that already knows how to live near sinks and mirrors. The stores gain a corner where shampoo, cotton rounds, and travel-size kindnesses can be found without another stop across town. Another acquisition adds a set of coastal New England rooms to the house. They have a fondness for seasonal finds, lanterns that look good on porches, serving pieces that feel like memories waiting to happen, bargains that make a cart feel clever. The tone is cheerful, the price tags friendly, and the fit inside the larger company comes from a shared belief that home goods should make a day glide instead of scrape. A few years later, a younger banner joins that speaks to a different milestone. Expectant parents walk wider aisles with new lists and new nerves. Strollers line up like patient ships. Car seats sit on a low stage waiting to be tried. Helpful associates learn to speak softly and answer the practical questions that do not fit neatly on packaging. Which one clicks easier in a tired car? Which one cleans without a fight? Whole Saturdays vanish here and no one minds. As these pieces gather under one roofline, the superstore identity hardens into something generous. Seasonal resets bring out bright storage in January, patio hope in March, dorm checklists in August, casserole dishes and guest linens as the year leans toward gatherings. The aisles feel planned, not pushy. End caps show a solution and move on. If you came for one thing, the store suggests 2 or 3 nearby decisions that will play nicely with it and not make your wallet regret knowing them. E-commerce settles into the background hum rather than the headline. Orders ship from quiet back rooms and quieter warehouses. In-store pickup becomes a relief valve during hectic weeks. The registry lives in both places at once. Friends click from their couches, couples come in to touch and scan, confirmations appear in email with the same calm tone the cashier uses at the counter. The brand learns to behave the same whether the cart has wheels or a password. Competition remains busy and sometimes loud. A rival chain pushes deep discounts and opens stores across the same suburbs. For a while, the parking lots look like mirrors of each other. Then the wind changes. The rival stumbles under the weight of debt and overstock. By the spring of a difficult year for everyone, its lights begin to go out. Customers who need a place to replace towels and toasters gravitate to the address that still behaves like a steady neighbor. The recession teaches retailers manners. Shoppers do the math out loud now. The big blue doors answer with simple courtesies, prices that hold steady longer, coupons that remain welcome, returns that remain human. A blender bought to stretch groceries behaves, and if it does not, the store makes it right. Little promises kept in a tight decade count double. The in-store experience grows small muscles of its own. Demos appear for coffee makers without making the floor feel like a trade show. Sample walls let hands judge knives and cutting boards without ceremony. Closet systems gain a corner where a neat life can be imagined in modular pieces. Associates learn a habit of asking what problem needs solving, a drawer that sticks, a bath that fogs, a kitchen that argues at dinner time. The right suggestion earns a nod and a place in a cart. Meanwhile, the gift registry becomes a kind of social calendar. A page online shows what has been purchased and what still needs a home. Friends coordinate gently. Aunts and cousins pick items that feel like their relationship in object form. The good roasting pan from the aunt who always hosts. The throw from the cousin who knows which couch you bought last spring. The store learns that it is sometimes a stage for generosity as much as it is a seller of goods. Across the family of banners, habits spread. The beauty corners become reliable for last-minute shampoo and travel bottles on a Thursday night. The seasonal chain becomes a weekend destination for tablecloths and unexpected finds. The baby stores become places where advice is tucked into product demos without judgment. Customers move between these spaces the way they move between rooms in a house. The internet grows bolder, faster, more crowded. Pure play e-commerce companies promise speed and selection that sound like superpowers. Big box generalists push into every category with endless aisles that live only in software. The housewares chain, built on manners and physical aisles, does not panic. It tries to translate its strengths, good returns, trustworthy brands, the relief of buying the version that will survive a roommate and a move. It does not always move first, but it moves deliberately. Advertising stays modest. The brand relies on the familiarity of its sign, the square of blue in a wallet, the weekend routine of couples adding to a registry and then adding to their cart. Shows and films treat the store as shorthand for a certain kind of adulting. A joke about a 20% coupon gets a knowing laugh because everybody seems to have one near the microwave or in the glove box. The stores themselves continue to learn how to be polite. Carts are checked for wobbly wheels. The aisle that narrows near the small appliance wall is widened. The towels are stacked at a height that invites a hand without threatening an avalanche. Lighting is warm rather than bright. Music knows how to stay a conversation behind conversation. In back rooms, scanners and systems grow more confident. The staff learns which colors sell in which zip codes. Orders move on trucks that arrive like bus schedules. The company's ambitions expand without losing their inside voice. New stores open. Old stores get better at being themselves. Managers are trained to treat grace as a policy rather than a mood. There are challenges too. A new entrant online undercuts on price. A trend in cookware passes by without much notice until customers start asking why a certain finish is missing. The response is to add, not to posture. The assortment widens by a notch. An end cap tests the new set, and if shoppers approve, the shelf plan changes without drama. The chain keeps the mentality of a problem solver rather than a tastemaker. By the end of the decade, the house that began with towels is a cluster of dependable addresses woven into family calendars. The baby banner hosts weekend classes and stroller tryouts. The seasonal chain pretends it is always almost a holiday. The beauty corners keep bathrooms honest between supermarket runs. The main stores stay what they have always been, relief wrapped in fluorescent light and helpful signs. If you walked through one on a Thursday evening in those years, you might see the whole model at work in a single loop. Start with a blender for smoothies a doctor recommended. Add a set of glass containers that will save you time on Sunday. Turn a corner and pick up a bridal gift that your browser already told you was still needed. End at the register, where a folded square of blue lowers a total just enough to make the week feel more manageable. The clerk smiles and says they'll see you soon, and somehow it all added up to a store that respected time as much as money. The next stretch will get louder. Fast shipping will change expectations. Decor trends will speed up. A management team will try a bolder voice. Some experiments will land. Others will miss. For now, the 2000s end with a specialty chain that has grown into a national habit, one that thinks like a host, sells like a hardware drawer, and has taught people to keep a small blue promise near the fridge magnet that holds the grocery list. In wedding season, Saturdays begin with coffee and end with a cart that knows two families. Names on a registry page become faces at a reception months later, and the brand sits invisibly between those two moments as the quiet organizer. An associate shows how to scan barcodes without missing a color choice. Someone jokes about how many spatulas a kitchen actually needs. The mood is less shopping than planning a life in objects that are meant to last. The web makes this choreography easier. A cousin in Phoenix clicks the gravy boat that matches the platter chosen in Philadelphia. A college friend in Chicago adds the baking sheet set the couple forgot. The page updates, a soft ing arrives on a phone, and miles compress into a single polite list that stays tidy from engagement to thank you notes. On the baby side of the house, classes guide new parents through car seat clips and stroller folds. The aisles are wide on purpose. People practice without feeling watched. When gifts arrive later at showers, the tags reflect a system that minimized duplicates and maximized usefulness. The store learned to be a tutor as much as a showroom, and households remembered the favor when they needed crib sheets and nightlights months later. Seasonal resets became a form of conversation with the calendar. In January, clear bins and labels whispered about control and fresh starts. In spring, patio sets rolled out with lanterns that made first warm evenings feel earned. Late summer leaned into lists printed for dorms, reminding families about surge protectors and shower slippers. November brought roasting pans large enough to forgive ambitious menus. The assortment never bragged. It simply appeared when needed. Even the way returns worked set a tone. A box that disappointed at home could come back with its dignity intact. Clerks did not cross-examine. They asked what went wrong and suggested a cousin product that might behave better. This turned the counter into a second chance rather than a confession booth. and that mood did more for loyalty than any billboard could have. During the worst of the downturn, the stores kept their posture. Associates were coached to offer lower priced alternatives without making anyone feel poor. End caps paired practical bundles that took the thinking out of small fixes, a set of airtight containers with a scoop, a broom with a dustpan that actually catches crumbs, bath mats that refuse to slide. A little competence in a hard year traveled far by word of mouth. The rival's bankruptcy was not celebrated on the floor. It showed up mostly as new faces at the register and old coupons from somewhere else tucked into wallets. The brand honored what it could, and where it could not, offered something close. A careful company knows that gaining a customer on a technicality is not as sturdy as keeping one through a good experience. By 2010, a visit felt both familiar and modern. You could still wander and touch. You could also click and collect. You could register in a store, then edit on a couch. The confidence behind these options came from steady habits, clean shelves, knowing associates, a coupon that behaved, and a selection font to how people actually live when the camera is off. And if you walked through on a Thursday evening, you might notice a small pattern, a blender in your cart for mornings, a set of containers for leftovers, a gift checked off for a weekend shower, a pack of travel bottles for a trip that snuck up on you. At the counter, the folded square of blue softened the total. The cashier slipped the receipt into the bag and said what they often said, "See you next time," and somehow felt like a place you would return to when ordinary problems needed calm solutions. By the new decade, Bed Bath & Beyond felt like part of the country's domestic routine. Couples still showed up with scanners and lists. Students still followed dorm checklists, and the blue square in a wallet still meant a small mercy at the register. The stores were steady on weekdays and lively on weekends. What changed wasn't the aisles, it was everything around them. Phones became the place where errands began. Shipping promised to hurry. Browsers learned your size and your shade. The chain had to translate its manners to screens without losing the voice that made people breathe easier at the door. The translation started with simple courtesies. The website became less of a catalog and more of a companion, letting a shopper check a shelf at lunch and pick up on the way home. Registry pages grew neater and kinder to relatives far away. Pickup counters learned to move briskly without turning the front end into an airport. None of this shouted. It matched the old promise, helpful, predictable, friendly, and offered it to a browser tab. Growth also came from the company widening the house. A beloved import and decor chain with lanterns, rugs, and cookies from far-off aisles joined the family, adding a porch of worldly color to a home that had been mostly white and chrome. A hospitality supplier came aboard too, bringing know-how about linens that behave under constant washing and traffic. Together, they nudged the assortment toward a richer pantry of home life, while keeping the tone the same. Useful first, then delightful. Alongside those big additions, the company picked up smaller digital shops with big personalities. One was a curated marketplace that loved limited runs and emerging makers. Another was a flash sale pioneer whose glory days had cooled, but whose audience still wanted an eye for style. A personalized gift site arrived with a knack for making ordinary objects feel like keepsakes. An online interior design studio joined as a quiet service desk for rooms that needed more than a measuring tape. Each of these felt like adding clever cousins to a family gathering. In stores, the decades-old choreography kept working. Seasonal resets made January feel achievable, March hopeful, August organized, November welcoming. End caps solved one specific friction and then stepped aside. Returns stayed gentle. The big blue doors still meant what they had always meant. You could come in with a rough plan and leave with a day that argued less. But the market outside grew louder. Pure online players promised speed that felt like magic. Generalists with giant websites turned every category into a side hustle. Price comparisons were a thumb tap away, which made the famous coupon feel less like a treat and more like an expectation. The paper square was still beloved. It was also expensive. The company tried to balance tradition with math, keeping the yes at the counter while searching for margins that could breathe. Even as online carts multiplied, the chain tried to carry its strengths forward. Demonstrations stayed human-sized, a coffee maker that whispered rather than roared, a knife wall that invited hands, a closet corner that made tidiness look possible. Associates learned to suggest a cheaper version without apology and a better version without pressure. The brand's old habit, solve the problem in front of you, remained the North Star. Some of the new digital bets were experiments as much as they were strategies. The curated indie shop offered fresh voices for bedding and decor. The Flash site offered a theater-like sense of occasion. The design studio offered advice that a box can't fit. The personalized gifts business taught the company how to ship moments, not just merchandise. Each brought lessons about tone, timing, and how far people would travel online to meet a brand they knew from a parking lot. Behind the scenes, the numbers started to clear their throat. The cost of keeping that friendly paper square generous showed up in slimmer margins. Online orders arrived, but foot traffic softened at stores that used to fill evenings on their own. Promotions lasted longer and stacked higher to keep pace with competitors who had turned discounting into default. A chain that once won by being reliably nice had to learn new ways to be simply necessary. The company also looked at craft and control. Could private label lines do what they do for grocery and apparel? Simplify choices, stabilize prices, improve quality where it actually matters. The idea took time to gather, and the decade became a quiet rehearsal for bolder moves to come. For now, the assortment widened a little, signage took a surer voice, and buyers hunted for items that would make kitchens less fussy and laundry baskets less stubborn. On Thursdays, you could still walk through a store and find the old rhythm intact. A blender went into a cart for mornings that needed smoothing. A set of airtight containers promised a refrigerator that wouldn't sigh when you opened it. A registry gift clicked into place on a list 100 miles away. Travel bottles caught a last-minute flight at the checkout. At the counter, the familiar square folded down a total that felt fair. People left with the sense that they had bought themselves a calmer weekend. Then the fabric puckered. Quarterly updates spoke of sales that were flat when the industry was rising, of traffic that preferred screens, of a margin line that looked pinched. Analysts wrote about the cost of always saying yes to a discount. Headlines noted that a rival turned ghost had vanished from the landscape years earlier. Yet the freed-up market did not automatically flow to the survivor. The company, so good for so long at steady growth, began to hear its investors more plainly. A group of shareholders arrived with binders and urgency. They argued that the assortment had become crowded, that stores needed fresh eyes, that leadership had stayed too long at the same desk. The debate grew public, as these debates often do. Within weeks, longtime leaders stepped aside. An interim hand steadied the wheel while the board searched for a new voice. The change was not a slam of the brakes so much as a turn signal in heavy traffic. By autumn, the company announced a new chief drawn from a rival known for crisp brands and tidy aisles. The hope was straightforward: bring the discipline of clear labels and bold edits to a chain that had started to say yes to too many versions of the same thing. Some senior roles changed swiftly, the org chart thinned, and the to-do list filled with verbs that had been waiting their turn. Simplify, modernize, refocus. Inside the stores, shoppers noticed less drama and more housekeeping. Signage grew cleaner, aisles breathed, end caps felt more intentional. Online, banners promised curbside pickup and smoother returns. The bones of the old promise: be helpful, be predictable were still there. The new plan aimed to lift the ceiling for a decade when pure speed and endless choice had become baseline expectations. None of this happened with fireworks. Bed Bath & Beyond has always preferred to change by tidying. The 2010s ended with a brand that still hosted wedding scans and dorm runs, still honored the paper square, still spoke in a friendly, indoor voice. It also ended with a list of harder questions than before. What to do with an expensive habit, how to be special without being precious, how to keep shelves full while the competition fills trucks faster. If you stood at the front doors on a winter evening near the decade's end, you could feel both the comfort and the strain. Customers still parked for a blender, a pillow, a drying rack, a last-minute frame. Associates still answered with patience. The blue square still found its way from wallet to counter. And yet there was a new draft in the air, the awareness that the next chapter would not be a small adjustment. It would be a choice about how to be a host in a world that had become a delivery route. The story pauses here, on the threshold of a busy year to come. A fresh leadership team has the keys, a list of promises, and an audience that wants the chain to stay itself while becoming quicker on its feet. The stage is set for bolder edits, for private labels with a clearer purpose, for a version of the old hospitality that can live happily in a browser and a trunk. Tomorrow we'll ask the questions. Tonight, the lights click off aisle by aisle, and the store returns to quiet. By the close of the decade, the picture was complicated but not hopeless. The chain still owned the registrar moments, weddings and first apartments and first nurseries that connect a store to a life's big edits. It had added digital shops that taught it nimble habits. It had learned hard lessons about promotions that overstay their welcome. And it had finally invited a new voice to steer. The questions waiting on the other side of the calendar were practical ones: how fast to change, how far to trim, and how to make clarity feel like comfort rather than austerity. If you left a store on a cold night near year's end, you would pass couples comparing towels with the same care people once reserved for new sofas. You would pass a parent pushing a cart with a drying rack riding high and a child clutching a small nightlight. You would see a registry printout peeking from a coat pocket and a phone screen showing an order ready for pickup. The doors would open with a soft rush, and the parking lot would smell faintly of winter. In the trunk, there would be objects that promise quieter mornings and easier evenings, the reasons this brand existed in the first place. By the close of the decade, the picture was complicated but not hopeless. The chain still owned the registrar moments, weddings and first apartments and first nurseries that connect a store to a life's big edits. It had added digital shops that taught nimble habits. It had learned hard lessons about promotions that overstay their welcome, and it had finally invited a new voice to steer. The questions waiting on the other side of the calendar were practical ones: how fast to change, how far to trim, and where to add without losing the manners that made the brand feel like a good neighbor. If you left a store on a cold night near year's end, you might pass couples comparing towels with the same care people once reserved for new sofas. You might pass a parent pushing a cart with a drying rack riding high and a child clutching a small nightlight. You would see a registry printout peeking from a coat pocket and a phone screen showing an order ready for pickup. The doors would open with a soft rush. The parking lot would smell faintly of winter. And in the trunk, there would be objects that promised small, certain improvements: a better pillow, a steadier rack, containers that make leftovers easier. The drive home would feel orderly. The decade opens with doors that close for reasons no merchant planned. Lights dim, signs appear in windows, and for a while, the most reliable store in the neighborhood becomes a promise at the curb. Associates wheel carts to cars with the steady grace of people who know where everything lives. A call ahead turns into a trunk popping open. The blue square travels by email now, and the yes at the counter becomes a nod from a masked clerk waving through a windshield. Inside, aisles are taped and quiet, then careful and measured. The company extends pickup to more stores and teaches back rooms to behave like small depots. Orders move from shelf to bin to car with a speed that feels respectful rather than breathless. Families discover that a replacement coffee maker can join the household without anyone setting foot past the sliding doors. The old hospitality, translated into distance, still feels like itself. At headquarters, math shifts to match reality. A plan forms to close locations that are no longer pulling their weight and to concentrate energy on stores that can carry more of the load. The goal is direct. Make the chain lighter on its feet while the world is heavy. The decision is not cheerful, but it is tidy. Carts are stacked, shelves are cleared, and addresses that once hosted dorm lists and housewarmings say a polite goodbye. The brand does not retreat from the web, it leans. Registry pages tidy themselves for parents and couples who need to coordinate from different couches. Delivery windows grow honest rather than heroic. Pickup counters learn a new rhythm. Text, arrive, open trunk that finds its own courtesy. On phones, the blue square becomes a code that still feels like permission rather than paperwork. Then the focus turns to the shelves themselves. If the future is sharper choices, the company decides to speak more confidently in its own voice. Bedding, bath, and kitchen lines arrive with simple names and packaging that behaves like a calm clerk. This is the soft one, this is the strong one, this is the dependable one. And the idea is not to replace trusted brands, but to make everyday picks less fussy. For a while, the blend looks promising from a distance. Partnerships reach past the parking lot. A grocer with a national footprint opens a digital aisle for home goods and baby basics, and suddenly the brand's familiar towels and storage bins sit beside milk and bread on a screen. Loyalty points mingle with dish racks. A registry gift shares a cart with cereal. It is an experiment in convenience that suits a year when people are doing the math on time as much as on money. The next turn is rough, and the habit of saying yes to a discount, once a charm, becomes harder to afford when every rival can copy the price with a click. Online players accelerate. Generalists grow deeper home aisles inside websites that never sleep. In stores, footfall softens on days that used to feel busy by default. The paper square still wins smiles, but the ledger frowns. Investors begin to ask for louder edits and faster results. Leadership changes follow. A new chief arrives with a reputation for neat assortments and confident house brands. Aisles breathe. Packaging finds a common voice. The plan is to trim duplicates, trust private labels to carry more weight, and keep the return counter's manners intact. For a few quarters, the chain looks newly organized, as if a pantry had been emptied, wiped, and restocked by someone who labels shelves before moving on. The year grows stranger. Headlines toggle between optimism and alarm. A financing package lands. A list of store closures lengthens. A merchandising reset is promised. Traders, watching from screens far from any aisle, turn the stock into a sideshow while associates continue to straighten rows of towels. Then a loss hits the news that is not about margins or footfall. The company lowers its voice. Stores keep their poise. Work continues because that is what stores know how to do. The plan, going into autumn, is simple to state and hard to live. Close more underperformers, tighten the mix, keep the chain moving while the house is rearranged. Some of the new labels are paused or retired so that the assortment can breathe without confusion. Clearance signs bloom and then recede. Loyal customers notice the effort and the strain at once, like watching a friend pack a room for a move. Spring brings a decision nobody wanted, but everyone understood by then. The chain enters court protection to wind down with care. Lights stay on long enough for households to finish their lists. Registries are tended, returns are handled without sharpness. Stores sell through what they can, and the sign that meant home goods for a generation begins to come down from facades that once welcomed whole neighborhoods. The name does not vanish. Another company, leaner and entirely online, raises its hand for the rights to the brand and the familiar web address. The idea is to pair a lighter model with a label people already trust. In practical terms, that means the .com that was once a doorway to 1,000 glass doors becomes the front of the whole house. Loyalty programs and account histories find new rooms to live in. For shoppers, the transition feels like a change of wallpaper more than a change of street. In the months that follow, corporate stationery changes as well. The buyer of the brand takes a new name, moves its listing to a different exchange, and leans into a portfolio that treats famous names like storefronts in a digital mall. The site that answers to the old address behaves like an improved version of itself. Fewer detours, cleaner pages, deliveries that arrive with a minimum of explanation. The blue square survives as an occasional guest rather than a permanent anchor. Elsewhere in the family tree, the baby banner takes its own long loop. First, it finds a new owner out of the auction, then a handful of stores return, then the lights go dark again, and finally, the brand circles back toward the same parent that now runs the home site. By early 2025, plans are made to relaunch online in time for a holiday that celebrates new mothers, with talk of a steadier future and a clearer lane. As summer approaches, a separate surprise appears. A home decor chain from Tennessee that has chosen a new corporate outfit announces that it will host the brand in physical form again under a slightly longer sign. The first location opens in the suburbs of Nashville with shelves of towels and bedding, laundry and bath, and a promise that sounds familiar even to people who have not walked under those letters in years. To sweeten the welcome, the old paper is honored at the counter, as if a memory could be turned into a coupon once more. The tone inside that new store is recognizably modest. Aisles are wide, lighting is warm, end caps solve a small problem and move on. A chief who speaks for the operator says they will test and learn the right mix, borrowing what worked and leaving behind what did not. The plan is to convert more locations if the first one behaves well, turning a regional banner into a bridge for a national name that once defined a kind of Saturday errand. Meanwhile, the website continues to do what websites do best: deliver basics without drama, sustain registries without lectures, and fill trunks at curbside when the week runs tight. The corporate parent reminds markets that the model is asset light and brand heavy, and that the goal is fewer empty parking lots and more full carts waiting on porches. It is a different way of being the same thing. For many households, the difference matters less than the outcome. Towels that behave, organizers that stack, a coffee maker that does not complain at 6 a.m. If you step back, the arc from 2020 to this summer reads like a store, learning how to exist in two kinds of space at once. There is the room with shelves and uniforms, and there is the room with menus and passwords. The chain entered the decade with both, lost one for a time, and then swapped places with a partner so that each could play to its strengths. Some names on the doors changed. The habit of being useful did not. The story at street level is simpler. A clerk wheels a cart to a trunk and wishes someone a good night. A package sits on a porch and waits safely under an awning. A new store opens its doors and honors a piece of paper someone kept in a drawer for years because it felt like a promise. Whatever happens next, the brand has made it to another chapter by being the same sort of help it has always tried to be: quiet, domestic, and on your side when a drawer sticks or a guest is due in an hour. The last picture of this part is a sign over fresh paint and a familiar logo in a browser tab. They belong to different companies working in concert, but to most people, they say the same thing they have said since the first narrow shop with a bell at the door. Come in with a list. Leave with less friction. If you forget the coupon, we will figure it out together. If you need curbside, we will meet you by the cones. Sleep well. The house is fine. Some banners did not make the trip through 2023. The small beauty chain that once lived inside this family said its goodbyes early, doors swinging shut after one last winter sale. Shelves were boxed, signs were lifted, and regulars made a final run for travel bottles and drugstore kindnesses. It was a practical decision, but the farewell felt personal in neighborhoods where the clerks knew which sunscreen people preferred. The owned brand experiment taught clear lessons at eye level. When a towel was labeled plainly and priced in reach, shoppers trusted it. When the same shelf crowded with too many similar names, the effect reversed. Editors went back through the house and picked favorites. The rest stepped aside. It was not defeat. It was the kind of choice a good pantry makes when it keeps the spices it actually uses. Partnerships that had begun before the upheaval proved useful. The grocery tie-in let a towel share a basket with bread, and a baby monitor arrive with milk. The lines between errands softened. Shoppers found themselves completing rooms in the same screen where they planned dinners, an arrangement that felt efficient rather than strange once it settled in. The stock market's theater could be noisy, but stores learned to keep their own weather. Curbside cones stood like familiar ushers. Pickup counters developed instincts for the dinner hour. Associates returned items without suspicion and suggested cousins that behaved better. When supply chains hiccuped, signs explained without scolding. The company's most convincing argument remained the same ones at the register. We'll help. We'll be quick. We'll make it right. In the courtroom season, wind-down notices were written with practical kindness. Shoppers were told what would ship and what would not, what would be honored and for how long. Registries received extra care so that weddings and new nurseries would not lose the thread. Employees closed each night with the same square edges and counted drawers as always. Proof that a trade can hold its manners even when its name is being packed for travel. After the auction, the familiar web address turned into a front door again. The look adjusted, but the point did not. Order the dependable things without fuss. The corporate parent adopted a new badge and moved exchanges, a bookkeeping change that mattered to traders, but not to the couple replacing a blender. The site's tone stayed neighborly. A return label arrived as easily as the original package had. The brick-and-mortar return in Tennessee added a human detail back into the picture. Someone folding comforters near a wall of pillows, someone checking shelf tags by hand, someone offering a cart to a parent wrangling a toddler. Cameras from local news stations panned across wide aisles, and old jokes about coupons returned, as if a friend had walked back into the room after a long trip. The promise at the counter sounded new and old at once. Bring what you have. We'll honor the feeling it carries. The first sign goes up before dawn on a warm Tennessee morning. Painters wipe edges, a lift lowers, and letters that vanished 2 years ago return above clean glass. Inside, boxes are open and the air smells like new cotton and cardboard. Someone straightens a wall of towels by color, breathing space between each stack so the display looks like a pallet instead of a cliff. The store does not shout about its comeback. It turns on the lights and behaves. Neighbors arrive in a stream that looks like curiosity disguised as errands. A parent coaxes a stroller through the wide doorway and heads for laundry, checking softness with one hand and squeaky wheels with the other. A couple moving house picks up a drying rack and compares two kinds of hangers, pleased that both feel solid. A college student with a list from a resident assistant checks off shower slippers and a desk lamp. At the counter, a clerk smiles at a blue square pulled from a wallet and nods that it is welcome. The idea is simple and old. Learn the neighborhood by listening. In the first week, the shelves carry reliable basics: sheets that wash well, pillows that hold their shape, organizers that turn drawers from arguments into agreements. As the days pass, the mix adjusts. If a certain size flies out by Friday, the next truck brings more. If a scent lingers at the wrong strength, it yields to a quieter option. Managers keep notes the way cooks keep a small notebook in an apron pocket, adjusting seasoning until the meal tastes like home. Displays respect the rhythm of the year. A table up front offers dorm solutions in late summer: shower caddies, underbed bins, surge protectors, a laundry bag that will not complain on stairs. In the first cold snap, throws migrate forward and kettles take the place of pitchers. Before long weekends, the end caps turn into checklists: guest towels, spare sheets, the kind of pillow that makes a pull-out couch feel less like a compromise. No one lectures. The store suggests, then steps aside. Old habits help new ones settle. Curbside cones stand in a neat row, and the pickup counter keeps a small clock in its head for the dinner hour. Associates learn to read parking lots. A wave through the windshield means a trunk is ready. A phone held high means an order number is on the screen. The whole routine goes faster than you might expect, not because anyone is rushing, but because the steps make sense and stay the same. The conversation between screen and shelf becomes ordinary again. A shopper standing in bedding checks the website for a size missing on the hook and places a ship-to-home order without losing a place in line. Someone on a couch miles away chooses in-store pickup because the weekend is busy and the list is long. The two rooms, browser and aisle, share a cart in people's minds, and the experience feels less like a clever trick than like a return to good manners. The brand's voice holds steady across these spaces. Online, return labels arrive without argument, and confirmations read like a clerk you would enjoy meeting. In the store, price cards speak plainly and packaging explains without talking down. Managers walk the floor with small corrections and large patience. The aim is not to surprise anyone. It is to make 1,000 little decisions add up to less friction at home. Not far from the new towels and kettles, another piece of the old house finds its footing. New parents open a laptop in early May and find a familiar blue and white name ready again for registries. They build lists between naps. Friends in other states click gifts that arrive with timing that feels considerate. The site invites questions without making people feel unprepared. A car seat chart behaves like a helpful cousin. A stroller comparison tool chooses kindness over jargon. The first packages land with the smile of a solved problem. Back in Tennessee, the store learns its streets the way any polite neighbor does. Staff memorize school calendars and game days to anticipate crowd patterns. When a storm is forecast, batteries and lanterns move where they can be found without asking. If a local team advances in playoffs, everything needed for a last-minute watch party appears near the front as if it had been there all along. The work is practical, and it is done with enough grace that customers feel cared for rather than managed. The question everyone asks in private is the same: can a familiar name feel needed again in a world that delivers nearly anything to a doorstep? The answer arrives quietly in carts. A family replaces a blender that died on a Tuesday and does not want to discuss algorithms to do it. A graduate picks pillows that will survive a futon and a move. A host realizes the guest room needs a lamp that does not hum, and a clerk walks over with 3 choices that all behave. When problems are specific, simple competence beats novelty every time. Assortment meetings happen like small rehearsals. The towel wall keeps its core, but tests a new quick-dry weave, then watches returns and repeats. Storage tries a deep drawer solution where kitchens tend to be small, and swaps it for wide bins in neighborhoods of ranch houses. Seasonal goods live on a slow conveyor. belt rolling forward by inches as weather changes. These edits look invisible from the parking lot and feel spacious in the aisles. The store's tone, warm light, wide lanes, solutions instead of speeches, lands well with people who grew up under the sign and with those who know it only from a parent's jokes about coupons. More than once, someone at checkout shares a story about a registry long ago or a dorm run in another city. The clerk smiles and hands over a receipt with the same simple promise on it as always. If it does not behave, bring it back and we will figure it out. On the web, the home goods catalog thickens without becoming noisy. Classic tools get a little quieter in design. The search bar learns to answer in plain language. Support chats act like they have time. Packages show up with labels you can peel without tearing your nails. When deliveries go wrong, fixes arrive with an apology and a next step. It is not dramatic, but food rarely tastes better because someone shouted while making it. In a few towns over, old storefronts watch for their turn. A regional chain that chose to put on a new corporate suit considers which addresses could carry the revived name best. The logic is sensible. Convert where the brand recognition is high and the neighbors still speak fondly. Pause where the fit is uncertain. Rollouts are measured because painted letters can be changed in an afternoon, but habits take a season to form. Training follows suit. New hires practice folding and facing. Veterans teach the quiet tricks that keep a cart from wobbling and a shelf from sagging. Managers run drills for weekend mornings and for the hour before closing when returns and pickups collide. The scripts are not complicated. Welcome, find, suggest, help, check out. We will see you next time. Confidence comes from repeating easy things well. The coupon, once a national punchline and a household staple, returns in careful ways. A drawer softened square is honored with a smile and a limit that feels fair. New offers arrive by email, modest and clear. The program behaves like seasoning, not sauce. It lifts a dish without drowning the menu. People notice because it respects memory and math at once. Local press stops by on opening week and again after the first holiday. Cameras pan across the towel wall. A manager explains how the assortment is tuned for the area. A customer talks about the relief of replacing a coffee maker without needing a password. The segment ends with a shot of a bag in a passenger seat and a line about a comeback that chose to be small and careful rather than loud and brief. Meanwhile, the online baby aisle grows into a small village. Guides answer questions that new parents sometimes feel shy asking. Registry pages nudge toward the practical. Extra sheets are worth it. Spare pacifiers save afternoons. A lamp with a dimmer makes night feeds kinder. Family members far away choose from lists that respect budgets and preferences. And parcels arrive with a neat card that feels like a hug sent through a shipping label. Inside the physical store, a modest technology shows up where it helps. Price checks are quick. Inventory screens tell a clerk that what is missing on a hook is sitting in the back and someone jogs to retrieve it. When a customer asks whether a mattress topper will fit in a certain size car, an associate folds a sample and puzzles it into a trunk, then teaches the fold on the way back in. The brand has always been better at human fixes than clever tricks, and the new chapter keeps that bias. The seasons walk past the windows and leave hints behind. Fall stacks cinnamon-colored throws near kettles and mugs. Winter shows up with an aisle of gift ideas that seem to know what hosts need, down to a tin of cocoa and a candle that does not overwhelm a small room. Spring leans on storage and fresh sheets. When summer rolls around, a display near the entrance reminds everyone about fans, breezy curtains, and the wisdom of a second set of guest towels. The people who worried that a comeback would feel desperate come to see something else. Steadiness. The return is more about posture than spectacle. Not every store will be converted and not every market wants the same mix, But where the sign fits the street, the conversations feel natural. A neighborly tone is hard to fake and harder to scale. The way to do it, the team keeps proving, is to keep solving small problems. Up the road, someone drives home after a quick pickup that did not require getting out of the car. A passenger reads off part of the list like a shopping poem: pillow protectors, drawer dividers, a small lamp to save the guest room from overhead glare. Nothing in that bag is a marvel of engineering. Everything in it will make evenings softer. That has always been the point, even when other parts of the story grew complicated. When you look at the whole picture this summer, it resembles a relay rather than a rescue. One company keeps the website that so many people bookmarked years ago and makes it run politely. Another company lifts the sign onto brick again and fits a tidy store to a particular town. The two halves share customers without forcing the details, because customers do not ask boardroom questions. They ask for towels that behave and returns that do not bruise. The longtime fans who stop in admit something quietly. They missed the feeling of walking toward a wall of options and finding that it did not overwhelm them. Choice is good. A hand on the right shelf makes it better. The staff that remembers this wins more loyalty than any temporary banner on a homepage. A good suggestion beats a good slogan. The next months look practical rather than dramatic. More conversions are planned for a single metro to see whether the halo grows when a cluster of stores wears the same sign. The online catalog continues to thicken around reliable brands and house lines that behave. The baby site lays down a steadier lane toward the holidays, with checklists that keep trips simple and customer service that knows the difference between reassurance and upsell. In the back office, there are still graphs and schedules and memos about things customers will never see, but the work stays anchored to the front doors and the curb. If a pickup counter slows, someone adds hands. If a return policy confuses, someone rewrites the sentence that caused it. If an end cap collects dust, the product moves to a table where it can be understood better. The chain has always been good at this kind of housekeeping, and the new arrangements give it permission to focus on exactly that. As late winter approaches, the store prepares another small series of changes. Guest rooms turn over after the holidays and need new sheets. Dorm checklists will be back before anyone is ready. The range hoods will ask for filters again. None of this will make a headline, and that is fine. The brand never truly lived on headlines. It lived in the 10 minutes before company arrives and the quiet hour after dishes are done. The last image of this part is a parking lot at dusk. The windows glow. A family loads a few bags into a trunk. Inside one of them is a kettle chosen for the way it feels in the hand, and a set of hooks that will finally end the scavenger hunt for keys. The receipt is folded around a small square of blue, which may or may not be used next time. In the house down the road, the new items will learn their jobs by Friday. The sign above the store will keep its promise by Saturday. And on Monday, the aisles will look exactly the way a calm start to the week should look. The long arc of this brand is not a straight line. It bends through small rooms and large warehouses, through paper coupons and phone screens, through aisles that teach you with your hands, and web pages that remember your size. When people say they miss it, what they usually mean is that they miss an errand that felt like progress instead of a chore. That feeling is the secret the sign carried for decades, and it is the piece that did not file for anything in court. It simply waited for another door to open. In this quiet view from late summer, the company is a partnership more than a place. One team tends the site and keeps the search bar honest. Another team paints a fresh facade in Tennessee and invites neighbors back under letters they recognize. They are different corporations with a shared promise. The useful things for a house should be easy to buy and easier to live with. It sounds ordinary because it is. Ordinary is hard to do well on purpose. The lessons that survive the hardest season are practical. Keep returns kind and simple. The most expensive policy is the one that loses a customer. Keep assortments edited. A wall of options should feel like choices, not noise. Keep the yes in your voice. Coupons can be seasoning instead of the meal. Keep the cart moving. Curbside and pickup are not stunts, but courtesies. The brand grew up by treating errands like hospitality. It can grow again by treating screens the same way it treated aisles. Inside the new store, the differences from the old era show up as posture more than product. Stacks breathe. Price cards speak plainly. A display tells a small story and then steps out of the way like a host who sets the table and lets the evening take over. Associates know the local school calendar and the traffic patterns near the interstate. When a storm is forecast, batteries and lanterns find the front. When dorms fill, shower caddies march to the entrance. The store keeps a hand on the season, the way a good kitchen keeps a hand on the stove. On the site, the same manners appear in software. Registry pages feel like invitations instead of forms. A gift link sends a note that sounds human. Shipping estimates give you the truth instead of a dare. When something arrives dented, the apology is fast and specific, and the fix does not require a scavenger hunt through policy pages. These are small gestures that add up to a brand voice you do not have to brace against. The old joke about the blue square returns with a little dignity. A drawer-softened coupon is welcomed with a smile and a reasonable limit. New offers arrive in email without shouting. No one needs to bring a stack. A single paper or a single code does the job. The point is not to make a deal feel like a loophole. The point is to make a purchase feel fair and familiar. The way a favorite cafe sometimes adds a cookie you did not ask for. The loyalty that reappears in the parking lot is not nostalgia pretending to be need. It is people remembering that some errands benefit from touch. Towels are still better chosen by hand. A pillow is still better picked by lying down on your side for a second and pretending to sleep. A storage bin is still better judged by whether it slides under your actual bed. When the store makes these checks simple and respectful, the trip earns its miles. The baby brand's return fits into this same map. New parents, awake at odd hours, build lists that feel like reassurance. A site that answers plainly, ships steadily, and does not talk down earns trust quickly in houses where the dishwasher is running at midnight. Registry gifts arrive with quiet timing, and the card inside says what family would have said if they lived closer. You've got this. The connection between the two banners feels less like a corporate reunion and more like a household finding its footing. None of this erases what happened. A bankruptcy is a hard ending written in legal language and warehouse work, but it is not the end of the idea that made the stores useful. That idea was never about square footage or streaky mirrors. It was about respect for time and relief for small frictions. A good bath mat that stays put is a nicer sentence than most press releases. The companies carrying the name now seem to understand that the way through a crowded market is to win 100 such small sentences a day. If you walk through the new aisles at dusk, you will see the future in modest details. A price checker works without coughing. A clerk hears a question from 2 steps away and answers without pointing. A blender demo is done at a volume that lets a sleeping child stay asleep. Pickup runs on muscle memory. A cart arrives at a trunk at the same moment a notification pings. The experience is not designed to impress your camera roll. It is designed to lower your shoulders. The bigger picture is that the brand is once again a shorthand. In sitcoms, it used to mean a certain phase of life. Registries, moving boxes, guest rooms. Now it might mean something calmer, a reliable fix on a weeknight, a store that tells the truth about its stock, a website that does not punish you for changing your mind. If it keeps that meaning, if it stays a word people use for let's just get this done without drama, then the past few years will look less like a fall and more like a course correction. Sometime in early winter, a parent will carry in a bag with a small lamp and a set of hooks. A college kid will come home with a duvet cover and the first laundry bag that feels like it might survive. Someone will replace a kettle that learned a new rattle. These are not grand purchases. They are the small edits that make a house less argumentative. And that is where the sign has always done its best work. Not in headlines, but in rooms. The brand has been many shapes: narrow shop, superstore, website, a sign over a neighbor's door, and it may take another shape next year. The constant that matters most is tone. Speak clearly, choose well, apologize quickly, deliver what you promise. If that sounds like advice for life, that is because a good store and a good host have always shared a playbook. The last light in the new store goes out one aisle at a time, and the parking lot holds its breath. Inside, towels are squared and shelves are faced. Online, carts that were abandoned at dinner will be waiting by morning with the same patience the old clerks used to show at closing time. Tomorrow, there will be dorm checklists again, and a couple comparing pillows, and a parent buying a night light that will save the hour after bedtime. The sign will keep its promise with 1,000 small acts of competence. And if you kept a blue coupon in a drawer, not for the discount, but for what it said about how a store should treat you, there is a place for it again. Not every address will wear the letters, and not every town will ask for them, but the idea is back where it belongs, in the everyday. Come in with a list. Leave with less friction. Sleep well. The house is fine.